Did you ever catch a monkey?
Did I ever... Lady, you'd be surprised.
1933's King Kong changed movies forever, and is probably the most influential monster movie. You could argue it's really the most important movie of all time, besides Troll 2.
No more popcorn.
But the relatively forgotten sequel to King Kong, Son of Kong, not so much. King Kong was so ginormously successful and really showed early 1930s moviegoers the spectacle that cinema could be. So of course there would be a sequel, and the sequel came out the same year of 1933, and it was the last Kong film to be produced by RKO. But worst of all, it was the last stop-motion created Kong, and that really sucks because I love me some stop-motion creatures. And it's a scientifically proven fact that stop motion and giant rubber suits are always going to be better than CG. So roughly a month after Kong, the eighth wonder of the world's rampage of destruction throughout New York City, Carl Denham is hiding out in a boarding house to avoid an infinite onslaught of lawsuits for his responsibility in Kong's actions. I mean, can you really blame anyone for suing him, because it's pretty much all of his fault for monster napping a giant gorilla and exploiting him for all his worth.
He was a king and a god in the world he knew, but now he comes to civilization, merely a captive. Ladies and gentlemen, look at Kong, the eighth wonder of the world.
Carl meets with Captain Englehorn, the captain of the ship Venture that initially sailed them on their journey to Skull Island. He's in the same legal situation as Carl and knows that they'll soon be indicted for all the Kong trouble, so they decide to escape the US with his ship and try their hand as freight carriers in the East Indies. Their freight shipping business ambitions ultimately fail and their prospects are getting quite low, until they run into the creepy, uber-slimy Nils Hellstrom, who originally sold Carl the map to Skull Island in King Kong. Hellstrom, being the shady guy that he is, gets into some trouble and wants passage on the Venture, so he lies about there being treasure on Skull Island. Or so he thinks. So Denham and company once again head to Skull Island to ruin more lives and almost drive the giant gorilla population to extinction. Yeah, that's pretty much what happens. And while searching for the treasure, they soon encounter a little friendly albino Kong, and hijinks ensue.
Well, if it isn't a little Kong.
He's stuck in a quicksand. He can't get out.
Well, I never knew that old Kong had a son.
Now, I don't think you'll ever meet anyone that likes Son of Kong more than the 1933 King Kong, but I think this is definitely better than its reputation as a fairly forgotten sequel to a major touchstone in cinematic history. Now, I know it's blasphemous to say this, but I never found the New York City portion of King Kong as engaging as the journey and adventure to Skull Island parts of the film. Besides the spectacle and cool effects of Kong interacting with the city, I preferred the island scenes and learning the lore of Kong and see him fight some of the other giant creatures. And in that regard, that's kind of where I prefer parts of Son of Kong. The major conflicts of the film take place on Skull Island, and we get to see some awesome stop-motion creatures battling it out. And if you were a big Carl Denham fan, you get a whole lot more.
Don't you suppose I'm sorry for the harm he did? I wish I'd left him on his island.
This film really makes a point of getting us to sympathize with him more, and I don't really think that was necessary given the final conflict with Kong, and that kind of really counteracts any sympathy I would have gained for him. I'm just gonna go ahead and totally spoil the end of this movie and mention how I really hated that they actually killed off Little Kong. Basically, he dies saving Carl during a terrible storm that's destroying the surrounding area, and he drowns after putting Carl in the boat with the rest of the crew, and they're all rescued in the end and even manage to keep a bit of the fabled treasure, and ensuring all of Carl's money troubles will be over. Thus ends King Kong 2, Carl Denham Electric Boogaloo. Yep, and thus we were given a very early example of a fairly unnecessary sequel, yet still enjoyable enough.